I have considered the defense's counsel's request for a further summation examination, and I have determined the court must uphold the defense's judicial right. So, counsel, you will proceed with your second summation examination. I presume the jury is ready?
We are, my lord.
Very good. In that case, I must ask each of you now to state clearly and concisely the grounds on which you find the defendant guilty.
Judicial findings. The accused left behind evidence at the scene, didn't he? These 3 books of his.
If there was some novel alternative explanation about how the victim was stabbed, I might reconsider. Even if the woman was throwing books, it can't be related to the crime if the window was closed, can it? Dearie me, if only it was only a little book, hardly life-threatening, even with a direct hit.
Look, I just want to get this over with. If I don't want to bring home some pay tonight, I'll have a tidy bit of trouble.
Come to think of it, we had a fire at home a while ago. It gave me the sneezes.
Alright, great talk, team.
Yes, considerably more tangible arguments. No, not necessarily. With one notable exception.
My learned student friend was unable to find fault in the previous witness testimony. So the court must accept the fact that it was indeed the accused seen fleeing the scene. And moreover, no one else was even at the scene to commit the crime.
Well, if the eyewitnesses are correct, it would seem as if the conclusion is somewhat set in stone. I fail to see how it can be argued any other way. That means, I'm afraid, that during this, it's essential that you establish some other tangible explanation. But how? What would even constitute a tangible explanation? Isn't it obvious? Who stabbed the woman, and how? Those 2 details are all you need to provide. Simply give us a name and a method by which the attack was conducted. And there I was thinking this might be hard. You have to do it, otherwise this really will be where it ends. No pressure then. As quite enough preamble, proceed with the summation examination. I presume you are prepared.
Yes, my lord.
Clearly, the key to this summation examination is going to be juror number 4, the maid, or should I say Miss Gary. We have a book that disappeared from the Gary's house on the evening of the incident, and the 4th book found in the victim's hands. There must be a way to link the 2. Yes, that's what we have to find, using every technique I've learned in my short career. Don't forget to keep an eye on Mrs. Gary and how she reacts, even to what other people say.
The accused left behind evidence at the scene, didn't he?
Hold it!
But as we now know, there were 4 books, not 3.
Well, what difference does it make?
There's every possibility the 4th book, in fact, belongs to the defendant's landlord.
Yes, that's the part I have a problem with.
Sorry?
Well, at the point the woman was stabbed, this landlord fellow was at home, wasn't he? Enjoying a fiery scrap with his wife or something, you said.
That's not exactly how I put it.
Well, anyway, the point is, the fellow and his wife were somewhere else when it happened.
I think that's what you call a strong alibi.
So it couldn't have been the landlord who did it, which only leaves the Nipponese fella. Honestly, I can't see what all this palaver's about. It's a done deal, isn't it?
Press. So, you might be willing to change your decision. Oh my, such delight on your face, but I'm afraid I shan't be swayed by emotion. Despite what you may think of me, I'm a very modern, metropolitan, and rational woman.
That's great.
If one reads the morning papers, it's all forgotten by tea time, isn't it? So why read them in the first place? You see, modern, metropolitan, and rational thinking, wouldn't you say?
And not at all extreme.
As I see it, overwhelmingly suspicious Japanese men have been implicated by overwhelmingly strong testimony. So despite one or two minor puzzlements, I do declare that the man is overwhelmingly guilty. Modern, metropolitan, and rational logic, wouldn't you say?
Overwhelmingly.
But us modern gals are always delighted to embrace new fads. So I'd be happy to reconsider a new theory if you could come up with one.
I'd be happy to do that. Let's do our best not to disappoint this metropolitan woman.
Even if the woman was throwing books, it can't be related to the scene if it was closed, could it?
But what about the possibility that the window was open?
What about it? I mean, there's just no way it could have been.
How can you be so sure?
The prosecutor fellow over there said it, didn't he? Winters in London are no joke. You don't want to invite that sort of cold indoors. So no, that window wasn't open. Us Londoners like sitting by the fire and staying warm, see?
But you couldn't categorically state the window wouldn't be open.
It just wasn't. They wouldn't have opened it.
What's the point in even having windows, huh? Counsel, you will kindly refrain from childish bickering. Oh, sorry. Somehow I need to show that there's an undeniable possibility the window was open. But the little book was on fire, was it not?
With flames of love, I'll have you know.
There's not really such a thing as a loving incendiary bomb.
Well, it brought it upon himself. It's like playing with fire to betray a fiery love, isn't it? Well, don't you agree?
Oh, any kind of betrayal is certainly a bad thing, yes. But I think the argument might have arisen out of your misunderstanding.
Never you mind that. The point is, we were just having a jovial little dispute, nothing more.
And I've no more... Are you doing good over here, buddy? You keep nearly getting knocked out.
I won't have any more of these suggestions that it has anything whatsoever to do with this crime.
Right, well, we'll see about that. What about juror number 5? He doesn't seem to be turning a hair at Mrs. Gary's relentless onslaughts. It's almost as though he's used to it. What a gentle soul he is. I'm working something through in my head right now, but it seems really fucking wild, so I'm gonna keep it to myself for now. You just want to get this over with? How can you sit there and say something like that? A man's future is at stake.
Well, him and me both, like I said before.
What?
I told you already I'm a day labourer, aren't I? If I don't bring home some readies with me tonight, you'll find me floating face down the Thames tomorrow morning. You heard me. My missus isn't one to mess about, you know. She can be fierce.
Another shining example of marital bliss.
A situation like this cropped up the other day. It's, well, do you know, it's funny, but I can't quite remember.
Sorry?
It was too frightening, that's the thing. I must have blocked it out.
What? I wonder if Mr. Beat will ever be dragged into the Thames by his scarf. Don't go there. There must be some way to jog his memory about that.
We had a fire at home a little while ago. It gave me the sneezes.
Does that have anything to do with your decision?
Sorry, what's that? You'll have to speak up.
Could you tell us more about that fire?
It was last winter. My grandchildren baked me a lovely cake on my birthday. It had 75 candles on the top, it did. What a sight to behold.
You put candles on a cake? Was that some kind of devil worship?
Of course not. It was an angel cake to celebrate my birthday.
It seems that's a common custom here.
Anyway, I mustered all my puff and blew to blow them out. But I must have blown wrong somehow. The flames didn't go out, but the candles went flying all over the room. The furniture caught fire and everything went up. The whole place filled with smoke.
Definitely sounds like devil worship. And by the sneezes, I presume you mean a cold.
What a fiasco it was. The children, bless them, threw water over me as they tried to put out the flames, and then, because the whole room had been filled up with smoke, of course, we had to open all the windows to clear it.
Oh, we've done it!
The biting winter air rushed over me like the devil dancing on my grave. I caught a terrible cold from it. It put me in the hospital for a while. I won't forget that birthday in a hurry.
Yes, we found it. It's okay, you don't need to explain to me that I need to find contradictions, I'm aware.
Alright, over here to this boy. Not press, Pitt. Uh-huh.
Objection!
These two jurors' statements clearly contradict one another. They do? How exactly?
Don't point at me again. I told you it wasn't me.
What's that say? Speak up, lad.
Juror number 3, do you see?
Oh, me? See? See what, sir?
Did you hear juror number 6's account of his birthday celebrations? It seems, despite being a Londoner, he once opened his windows in the middle of winter.
Well, yes, of course, because it was an emergency. I mean, obviously, if a room had been filled with smoke, he'd be mad not to open the... Oh!
Exactly. On the day in question, at the time of the incident, there was a fire in the Gary household, and Mr. Gary had the following to say about it. The whole place filled with smoke. Oh. She's not happy.
Excuse me!
Juror number 4, do you have something to say about that?
Mrs. Gary. Oh, dearie me. What is the meaning of this? How dare you imply that I'm hiding who I really am?
It's imperative you confirm something for the court, so please, it's time to drop the pretense now.
What is it?
When the fire started in your house that day, did you or your husband open the window?
What? I beg your pardon? What are you insinuating?
The room would have been thick with smoke after the carpet and bookcase caught fire. In a situation like that, it's inconceivable that you wouldn't have opened the window.
And what if we did? Oh, all right then. Yes, you're right. My husband was frantically trying to open the window, which can't have been easy since I continued to give him a justly deserved book battering.
Even though your house was on fire?
Oh, you never stop throwing until the anger subsides. It would be terribly bad for the nerves to do so otherwise.
Of course, I should have realized. That's a significant step forward. You've managed to establish the window was open. We simply must have that added to Miss Gary's formal statement. I mean... So I'm gonna press these two against each other now? Pit?
Objection!
These two stay... Okay, fine. I mean... Like, that's the angle we were going at this for the whole time, to change his mind, but his mind didn't get changed, so I was like, well, how do we do it? The window was open at the time. I'd clean forgotten, but it's true. Well, can I press you on that now? The fourth book found at the scene of the crime shows very obvious signs of fire damage. And the title of the book is The Lion's Pride, the same title, in fact, as the book that was Mr. Gary told us he had been reading.
Well, I really couldn't say.
On the day in question, did you or did you not throw at your husband the copy of The Lion's Pride that he had been reading?
I did. I was the first thing I could lay my hands on, so I hurled it straight at him, and now that you come to mention it, yes. He was rather enjoying reading it, you're right.
Why did you not reveal this information at the outset?
Because I couldn't, you insolent little man. I didn't remember. At times like that, you pick up and throw whatever you can lay your hands on, as you well know.
I really don't.
I barely...
Hey, what's up, brother?
Excuse me.
What is it, juror number 5? You know something?
I've remembered what it was. That memory I blocked out.
Ah.
It was listening to what Granny was saying. Brought it all flooding back. Who are you calling a granny, you cheeky devil? It's Mrs. Gary or the maid, I'll have you know.
The man doesn't flinch. Please tell me it's not just because he's used to being hit all the time.
It was about 2 weeks ago now. I just got back home after work, like. I put my hand in my pocket for the wages I'd earned that day, and I nearly died. There was a hole. Every last penny had dropped out.
Oh dear, what a disaster.
You haven't heard the half of it, boy.
Oh?
The wife was cutting up some chicken at the time. I could hardly get the words out, but I told her straight, I've lost the day's wages, love. Next thing I knew, the blade was whizzing past me ear, stuck into the wall next to me. It did about an inch deep.
No words, just terror.
I could smell it then, you know. That god-awful stench of the Thames. I was sure I was gonna end up face down in the muddy banks that night, I can tell you. Now, that's a real disaster, isn't it?
I'll never use the word lightly again.
Anyway, the point I'm trying to make is this. When women lose their rag, they'll throw anything at you. Knives, hatchets, hammers, you name it.
Mr. Naruhodo, you mustn't think that all women are short-tempered and unrefined. I wasn't thinking that. Throwing books at household objects at people is so, well, it's so uncivilized. At least attack with honor, using a bow or the like, or a good old-fashioned flip. What? Attack? Who are you going to attack? Never mind. Anyway, the man's words. Yeah, novel method for being stabbed.
Objection!
Those two statements have a deeply significant connection.
Good grief, you mean they don't contradict? Explain, counsel.
Juror number 2, do you think perhaps that this could be one such novel alternative? I did say right at the start, did somebody chuck a knife at them?
Whatever do you mean?
An alternative explanation as to how the victim was stabbed in the back.
What are you talking about?
We've demonstrated the 4th book, The Lion's Pride, that was found at the scene of the crime, originated in Miss Gary's room on the top floor of his house, Mr. Gary's room. Therefore, it's equally possible that some other object besides the book could have found its way from the Gary house to the streets below.
What's this now?
After all, Mrs. Gary could have thrown any number of different objects. Isn't that right, juror number 4?
What are you insinuating now, you little beanpole?
I'm beginning to think that ever since the true origins of this book came to light, perhaps she's had a feeling this might be what happened.
Now you listen here, you little Eastern Gala. As the foreman of this jury, I demand a straight answer. Give us what you think. You give us this yarn about some other object making its way out of the house, but what? What was it?
I'm really taking a big gamble here. This was a bold accusation to make, but I haven't any real evidence to back it up. But I'm certain that at the very least this warrants further investigation. Alright, Mr. Foreman, I'll try to explain. The other object was
this knife!
Juror number 4, Miss Gary.
What now?
I must apologize in advance for this, but I need you to confirm something for the court. This knife. Have you ever seen this knife before?
Ah, good Lord, counsel, what on earth are you doing? That's the weapon that was lodged into the victim's back.
My lord, remember that when the victim was attacked, Mr. and Miss Gary were in the throes of an argument. Mrs. Gary was hurling anything she could at her husband, who would have been backed up against the window. A window that had been opened to clear the smoke, through which a book sailed to the crime scene.
You can't seriously believe that. The book was found in the victim's grasp.
Are you saying that it flew out the window and across the street to land neatly in her hand?
No, she bent down to pick it up, and that's when the knife fucking hit her.
Oh, even my missus hasn't a name like that.
Yes, I admit there are many details we don't yet understand. But that's the point. That's precisely why we must not allow this trial to end. Not right now. Oh my.
Oh!
Mrs. Gary, your answer, please. Have you seen this knife before or not? That sounds like a yes. He's not happy. My lord, I wish to change my decision. I'm a woman of my word, after all. Thank you, madam.
Yes, I agree. I certainly didn't see this coming, but I just don't think it would be right for this trial to come to an end now with so many unanswered questions.
Mr. Foreman?
I have to agree. Not that I think the granny did it, mind.
Yeah, you know what? I'm not quite happy about this at the moment either.
All together now, ladies and gents.
We did it, team. Alright, now to get hydrated for Von Zykes. Congratulations, Mr. Naruhodo. Hold on. Oh. I was also trying to take one of my pills, and it has sailed away. I have found it. Alright.
So, as a result of the defense's summation examination, a number of jurors' leanings have changed. 2 jurors call guilty against 4 calling innocent. Accordingly, the opinion of this court is divided, and this trial will continue. Now then, Lord Von Zykes, how does the prosecution wish to proceed?
This trial is rapidly descending into a farce. Like a corked wine, the first few sips are bitter enough. But what follows is so repugnant, it's good for nothing save the gutter.
If I may, Lord Von Zykes, the defense has just put forward a credible alternative explanation.
Credible? Is that your considered opinion, Mr. Foreman? The defense's argument is a joke to which I barely know how to respond, but let me start by insisting that you must all familiarize yourselves better with the relative positions of those being discussed.
What do you mean by that?
It should already be more than apparent that between the crime scene and the Gary household runs a rather wide street, Briar Road. Which means that the distance from the Gary's house to this scene is some, yes, 15 yards.
Let me see. 15 yards. It's around 14 meters. 14 meters? It's a little farther than I'd imagined.
And, as you ladies and gentlemen of the jury rightly noted as having portentous significance, the 4th book was found in the victim's clutches. In other words, the smoldering book wantonly hurled by the lady of the house traveled some 15 yards to land on the opposite side of the road, neatly clasped between the victim's fingers and thumbs. Is that your final conclusion, my learned and deluded friend?
No, but I can't tell you what it is. And did that jackknife follow a nearly identical trajectory to plunge into the middle of the victim's back? This fantasy is somewhat stretching the notion of having a bad day for the victim, I think. Even those pathetic serialized detective stories have more believable plots. Except I think she just picked it up, and while she was picking it up, she got it in the back, but you know. And prosecutor loves the sound of his own voice. Serialized detective stories are pathetic, are they? How dare he? Maybe let's pick our battles here. My lord, might I be allowed to speak? As judicial assistant, you may speak for the defense. Yes, go ahead. The prosecution may consider the idea a fantasy, but what the defense has postulated was believable enough to persuade the jury to change its leaning. And as such, the court has a duty to explore this alternative explanation as thoroughly as possible. To that end, juror number 4, Mrs. Joan Gary, must be called to testify and submit to its cross-examination. Saints alive! A cross-examination of a juror? Order, order. Well, this is highly irregular. It is unprecedented for a member of the jury to be summoned to the witness stand.
And unnecessary.
Lord Von Zykes?
There are already witnesses in the stand whose testimony the defense may further cross-examine. If my learned friend's farcical theory has any truth in it, then both a burning book and a jackknife must have flown through the sky before this couple's eyes. And we must assume they would be able to testify accordingly.
What say you, witnesses? Yes, sir. Constable Rowley Beat reporting for duty, sir.
Well, good morning, officer.
Sorry for dozing off until now, sir. I haven't slept for a month on account of a villain who's appeared on my beat, sir.
Oh, that might be important. They are so heroic, these London bobbies.
Patricia, my darling, I've been neglecting you, but no more.
Oh, Rowley, you make me swoon. Disgusting.
Very well, I hereby reject the defense's request. And order the witnesses in the stand to testify again. State forthwith before the court any details pertaining to the defense's alternative explanation. Yes, sir. This case has nothing to do with Mr. and Mrs. Gary. Believe me, a London bobby is good for his word. You see, sir, the windows on the top floor of the Gary house had top-hinged casements.
Obviously, if anything had been thrown out of the window, we would have seen it. I did leave the scene to go and fetch help, but my trusty Rowley was there to make sure nothing was disturbed.
I didn't take my eyes off the crime scene for one moment, sir. Nothing strange to report on that front, sir. Well, this is quite startling. Top-hinged casement windows.
That detail was not in the police report, Constable.
Ah, yes, sorry about that. I must have been a little drowsy. Ahem.
You cannot excuse your sins with drowsiness every time, Constable.
No, sir.
Sorry, but what exactly is a top-hinged casement window? And you cannot excuse your ignorance with such trite remarks, my learned friend. Of course, sorry. I found it. Cast your mind back to the windows. Alright, I'll try. Oh, those. Okay. I've never heard them described as that before, but I understand. So, the window opens in order to allow air to circulate inside the house. But it is a top-hinged casement window, and it swings open along the upper edge, as you see. I'm glad you've rectified your ignorance. A casement window's most prominent feature is its stay, a metal bar which prevents the window from being opened beyond a certain amount.
It prevents it opening? Absolutely correct, sir. In other words, if a book or knife were to have thrown through the open window, it would have clattered against the window pane and fallen straight down to the pavement below.
So we're gonna have to say she died in a different spot now if we're gonna go with this. You see the problem then. Good, your education in windows is complete. There was never any possibility of either the book or the knife traveling 15 yards over the road. That is, unless the window pane had been shattered, something we've discounted already. That can't be.
Did you see that, Rowley? That young Japanese man just collapsed in agony. Yes, my darling, I saw how he crumbled before me.
Oh, Rowley, you're so strong. How is this happening? I haven't even started the cross-examination yet, and already my argument's been destroyed.
Consul, if you could drag yourself upright again, the court awaits your cross-examination.
My lord.
Alright, so pressing is going to be necessary.
This first one doesn't seem like it could ever result in anything, but you never know. How can you say that for certain?
A very good question, sir. And the answer is this. It has the noble founding principles of the force written on it as a reminder to all us policemen of our sworn duty.
He showed us that before, didn't he? Did he? I can't say I remember. He did.
To patrol the streets of London town and uphold the peace of the common man. That's what the job's all about. And that's why I can stand here today beside my long-suffering wife and tell you a bobby's good for his word. While rubbing my tired eyes, admittedly, sir.
Oh, Rowley, you're so manly.
Of course I am, my darling Patricia. Oh, Pat. Oh, Rolly. Disgusting.
No, none of this is what I meant. I meant how can you be certain this case has nothing to do with the Garys?
Oh, I see, sir. You should have done so earlier, sir.
Yes, well, could you answer the question then?
Absolutely, sir. I will answer to the fullest of my abilities, sir. There's a surprising reason why this domestic dispute can't be related. But before I get into that, sir, just one thing.
Yes.
I'd very much like you and all your countrymen to understand that the great British institution of Scotland Yard, so I hope you'll take back some tales of us London bobbies and how we uphold our guiding principles.
I wasn't planning on going back just yet. I've only just arrived.
So to that end, sir, I'd be happy to lend you my warrant card for your perusal, but I must warn you, you won't be able to get it through without shedding a few tears.
Thank you. I'll try. Alright, so I'm glad I did it. Let's consult that. Nope, that's not what I wanted to do. So go back first. Then, let me gander at that manual. A policeman will strive to preserve the peace within his allotted beat. A patrolling officer is expected to walk 20 miles around his beat every day for the furtherance of community relations. Any crimes fall under the jurisdiction of the beat in which they are discovered. When a crime is discovered on his beat, a policeman must assist with initial investigations and help detectives. Well, that's not very helpful right now. Fuck. Back it up. I just... back up. Thank you. Press. By which you mean they don't open fully, is that correct?
Yes, sir. They're just there to allow a bit of air through the house, you see, so they're restricted as to how much they open.
And therefore, anything thrown out of the window from inside the room would simply strike the pane and fall to the street directly below. For clarity, allow me to mark the map. This would also explain why the tip is missing. Here is the location where the objects would have fallen.
Yes, directly opposite the scene of the crime, on the other side of the Ride Road.
Would it have been so hard for somebody to mention this top-hinged casement before? Well, I have another question for you.
And what would that be, sir?
How do you even know? Why do you have any idea what sort of windows they are furnished with?
Oh, well, sir, that's very simple.
Excuse me.
Do you have something to add, Mrs. Beat?
Sorry.
You look, well, delighted. Is there some particular reason for that? Oh, I was just remembering, that's all. We were really so lucky. Lucky? What do you mean? Well, of course I feel terrible for the poor woman who was attacked. Don't underestimate me, sir. But we were just so lucky it didn't happen on Rowley's beat. It was so close, you see. Oh, I hadn't realized. Oh yes, that street, Briar Road. That's the boundary between Rowley's beat and the next one. Isn't that right, my love? Constable Beat.
Oh, yes, that's right. That's the reason I was helping out with interviewing the occupants of the Gary household. Their house is on my beat.
You said no, this is contradicting what you said earlier. That's really cutting it close then. Constable, I wonder if you could clarify something? If the Gary household is on your beat, does that mean that the pavement next to it is as well?
Outside Mrs. Gary's house? Yes, ma'am. The pavement on that side of the road is part of my beat.
I see.
Just think, if the woman had been attacked just on the other side of Briar Road, we would have never been able to go to that meal for our wedding anniversary.
But that's the life of a bobby, after all.
Extraordinary people are bobbies. Do you know what I think? I think it was the good Lord's way of rewarding my Rowley for all his work. Don't you think so, darling? That must be it, Pat, my love. That must be it.
I think perhaps we should make sure that they have that officially on record. Leave it to me. I'll take care of it immediately. The pavement where the victim was found lies just outside Constable Beat's beat. And now it's my turn. Hold on. So, I mean, do I present it there? How do I present this exactly? Like, I know what I want to say, but I'm not sure how to say it to the game exactly. Yes, because he said that he was helping, but he doesn't need to be because it wasn't on his beat. But we are now concluding it must have been on his beat. Yes, you went to a nearby police to fetch another officer, is that right? That's right, yes. If it had been on Rowley's beat, I would have known exactly where I was going, of course. Don't feel bad, my love. You can't be expected to know the location of every police box. So Rowley told me the way, only I sort of got a little lost on the way. Patricia, my darling, that's why I love you. Your terrible sense of direction is bewitching. Disgusting. Oh, please. So I suppose I was gone for about 15 minutes. But like I said, my Rowley was at the scene the whole time. I was off duty at the time, of course, but a Bobby is never really off duty, sir. Alright, so there was another one. There was one I didn't press on. Right here. But according to my notes here, the sun had gone down. Oh, not this again. Burrow strolling, gazing at the night, was lucky. Sorry. The star that will guide us to eternal happiness. Can't it guide you to the answer to the question? If a flaming book had cut the sky in front of us, it would have lit up like a shooting star. And I'd seen a shooting star, I would have made a wish upon it. Let Rowley be an inspector, I would have said 3 times at least. Of course, with that smog and everything, we couldn't actually see any stars. In short, are you trying to say that neither a book nor a knife crossed the sky in front of you? Yes, sir, that is correct, sir. Certainly seems like they're telling the truth. And then we saw the poor woman fall to the ground, so we ran straight over to help her. So, I'm gonna put this on the last one as well. Nothing to report. That's correct, sir. I had my eyes wide open the entire time, never looked away for a second. No one else approached the scene, and nothing was removed from it. I can swear to that on Scotland, on the yard's honour, sir. Really, that seems a little strange. Beg your pardon, sir. Strange why? Seems altogether regular to me. This burnt copy of The Lion's Pride was originally in the Gary's household, so the question remains, how did it find its way to the hands of the victim? Can you shed any light on that, seeing as you were at the scene of the crime? Aha! Could it be a different... No. Even if that were possible, why would the victim have been gripping a book like that in her hands? As we can see from this photographic print, she had a bag over her shoulder. Well, sir, that book was in the lady's hands from the moment we arrived at the scene. Is that so? There's something about that statement that's not sitting right with me. The 2 mysteries of how that knife ended up in her back and how that book ended up in her hand. There must be some common thread between them. Can I ask you something, please, Mr. Lawyer, sir? Oh, yes, what? You're doubting us, aren't you? I can tell. What? I wasn't really... I mean, what's she doing? Please, I'm just because I'm a woman, it doesn't make my testimony any less valuable. You might just say me as the wife of a policeman, but I'm a woman of my word, I am. I really don't remember ever suggesting I doubted you. No excuses, I don't want to hear it. My voice will be heard, my lord. You let me speak, won't you? Yes, Mrs. Beat, I'll allow you to supplement your testimony. Sometimes the path of least resistance is the sage one. That was a very loud mutter. I heard that. That Japanese man thinks a policeman's wife's word counts for nothing, does he? Well, watch out, sir. I might let you get away with something like that, but my Rowley won't. Duly noted. I ask you to continue. What could she possibly be about to say? I know what I saw. My eyes never let me down. My sense of direction is a little off sometimes, though. Okay, we're gonna press on that then.
Hold it!
Mrs. Beat, nobody's questioning what you've told us. I saw it, I did. That evening, I saw it clearly. That little Eastern man with the whiskers and the funny curved back slinking away from the scene.
And I know that I didn't see as well. Didn't see any flaming books or knives flying through the sky. All very clear. You also mentioned something about a poor sense of direction. Oh, yes, well, it's a little embarrassing, really. I always end up at the wrong place when I've made arrangements to meet Morley.
Excuse me.
Excuse me. Constable Beat, is there a problem? No, sir, no problem, sir. Did your wife's remark just now bring something to mind, perhaps? Well, in a way, sir, yes, sir. I was just remembering that the same thing happened this evening is all. You mean Mrs. Beat lost her way on the night of the incident? Well, you see, I sent her off to find a police box in the next beat over from mine, but she was gone a fair bit longer than I was expecting. I thought she'd be back inside 10 minutes, but my darling was a good 15. Oh, Rolly, you're such a tease. But the reason I was so long was because of the bouquet, silly. The bouquet? Sorry, what bouquet? Oh, it was a present for our wedding anniversary. Rolly's so romantic. He saved up for it with farthings and halfpennies that he found in the gutter while doing his rounds. Yes, how romantic. I'd forgotten all about it until just now. Had you, my darling? Oh, yes. But that was just between us. No talking about it to anyone else, darling. You have to promise. Really? Oh. What? Constable Beat looked very obviously troubled during that exchange. Afraid I can't offer any insight. But I'm quite sure of one thing. We have to ask Mrs. Beat about the bouquet. Mrs. Beat, this bouquet. I'd like you to add details about it to your testimony. Oh, really? I'd love to. Uh-oh. He doesn't like the sound of that. I dropped my bouquet and ended up losing my way for a while.
Hold it!
You mean you dropped the bouquet at the scene of the crime? Yes, that's right. I was so upset. When we ran over and saw the woman with a knife in her back, I was so shocked I dropped the bouquet Rolly gave me. It was in a dark spot where the streetlights weren't casting any light, so I didn't notice at first. And then you went to the police box to report it to the policeman whose beat it was on. Yes, and I came back to the scene with the other constable. That's when I spotted my bouquet again, but the funny thing was, when I went to pick it up, it was nowhere near the victim's body. In case you need reminding, Miss Beat, the victim is not deceased. I was all flustered for a moment when I heard a voice calling me from the other side of the road. Rolly moved the body so it wasn't on his beat. That's right, silly me, I'd gone over to the wrong side of the street. Although I'm going to blame the bouquet this time, I can't really think how it got there. So the bouquet moved from one side of Briar Road to the opposite. Curious indeed, isn't it? But that's the worst of it is I forgot to pick the bouquet up again when we left the scene. That beautiful rose Rolly brought me, with what changed from the gutter he had spent so long collecting. By bouquet, do you perhaps mean this sorry, solitary rose? Oh. Yes, that's it. That's the bouquet Rolly bought me for our anniversary with bits of change. May we just call it a rose. Tell us, Lord Van Zykes, where did you come by the flower? According to the report by the police officer in charge of the crime scene, it was found on the edge of the pavement in front of the Gary household. In front of Gary's house. Although it wasn't noticed until the morning as it lay where the street lamps cast no light. It was believed to be of no relevance to the case since it was found on the opposite side of the thoroughfare. Oh, thank you, sir. Can I have it back now, please? No, I think for good measure this should be added to the court record as evidence. Oh. But it's a symbol of our love. I want it back after the trial. Do you hear me? I want it back. Alright. How do we do this exactly, though? How do we... God damn it. I keep just trying to advance the text. Drop my... Losing my way for a while. my trusty Rolly there was making sure nothing was disturbed. We would have seen it. Hold on. Can I press it? Can I do it there? The shock of seeing the victim stab the victim caused Miss Beat to drop the rose where she stood. How do I present this exactly? Like, I know exactly what happened, but I don't know how the game wants me to show it to it. Like, do we press here? Yes. We do it there, right? We present the rose. Or do we present this? No. I think we present the rose there.
Objection!
No, we don't present the rose there. Like, what happened was Rolly moved it to the other side of the street, but I'm not sure how to point that out.
Objection!
Okay, you present it there. Alright. You claim, Constable Beat, there was nothing to report in 15 or so minutes you regarding the scene, but that cannot be. What do you mean to say? In your testimony just now, Mrs. Beat, you explained to the court that when you arrived back at the scene of the crime with the policeman assigned to that beat, the bouquet you had dropped at the victim's side was no longer anywhere nearby. Yes, on the opposite side of Briar Road where the victim was attacked. But considering the size of that meager bouquet, if a single sorry bloom can be so described, no doubt it was blown in the wind across the street back into the gutter where it belongs. Meager? But if that were the case, why did Constable Beat not testify to that fact? No one else approached the scene, and nothing was removed from it. Constable Sweet swore to that on Scotland Yard's honor. But the bouquet belonged to me. It has nothing to do with the case. That's why Rolly didn't mention it. No, because sadly it's not only your bouquet we're talking about. More than one thing in this case is mysteriously the wrong way around. What are you talking about? Think about it. Beside Mrs. Beat's bouquet, there's Mrs. Gary's book. Mr. Gary's copy of The Lion's Pride, which was thrown out of the window, would have struck the pane of the encasement window and landed here on the west side of the street, and yet it was actually found here on the opposite side. Meanwhile, according to the testimony we'd heard with Mrs. Beat's bouquet, should have been dropped here at the scene of the crime on the east side. But in fact, it was actually found here on the opposite side of the road. There's no logical explanation for those two things, unless somebody deliberately moved them. What are you trying to say? It sounds like you think my Rolly's done something wrong. Don't listen to a word that scrawny lawyer says, withering on about books and bouquets. Why should we care? It's nitpicking, that's what it is. Oh, good. Mrs. Gary's come around. You might call it nitpicking, Mrs. Gary, but deliberately meddling with the scene of the crime is a criminal offense. It's called, tampering, Mr. Naruhodo. But the person responsible for this tampering cannot admit to it, for a very subtle but compelling reason. Tampering? You've barely heard the term before. Tell me, my learned friend, who could possibly have caused to carry out such an elaborate deception? Who is It's Gary. Or it's not Gary, it's Rolly. Not Gary, fuck me. I am saying that Roly-Poly is the one who did it. Obviously, there's only one person it could have been. Constable Rolly Beat, it was you. What? A policeman? A member of Scotland Yard? What nonsense. Why would Rolly do something like that? There's no one straighter than my husband. No Bobby works more tirelessly. Mrs. B, you said in your testimony that your husband asked you to go to a nearby police box to fetch the officer on duty.
The 15 minutes you were absent from the scene is the only opportunity anyone had to tamper with it. You're making it up. It's all nonsense. It's all lies. What about the Japanese man with the whiskers? I bet it was him. He did it. When? If that was true, Constable Beat would have seen him. Oh. And forgive me for pointing it out, but when you dropped your bouquet, it was after the defendant had fled the scene. Ah, well. First you make accusations about the landlord and his wife, and now you incriminate a policeman as well. But your accusation lacks one important thing. You claim the scene was tampered with, but there is only one reason anyone would commit such a reckless crime: to hide something. That's right, he's right. But my husband and I just happened to be there, that's all. Why would anyone have anything to hide? It doesn't make sense. You've offered no motive for this alleged tampering, and until you do, your accusations are nothing but empty threats. That's the key to this entire affair. Have you solved the mystery? I have solved the mystery. You have made a very serious accusation. If you are mistaken, I'm sure I need not point out that your reputation will be irrevocably damaged. With a stark warning in mind, you will now explain the court this motive. Yes, my lord. Constable Beats' was where the victim fell. Where the victim fell to the ground. That is what this Bobby had to cover up at all costs. What? Where the victim fell? You mean where she was attacked? What are you talking about? We told you at the very start, didn't we? On the pavement of Briar Road. We saw it happen. He was right here, as if anyone didn't already know. That's certainly what everybody has been led to believe, but in fact, that isn't where the victim was stabbed at all. What? What? I'm beginning to wonder where this tumultuous trial will end. If that's your assertion, then the court is dying to know, my Nipponese friend. Where are you proposing the crime actually took place? Right here.
Take that!
But that's on the opposite side of the road. I don't understand. On the evening in question, Mr. Gary's book fell directly down from the open window above, and your bouquet, Mrs. Beat, never moved at all. What did move was the scene of the crime itself. Good gracious!
Objection!
Perhaps you haven't been listening to the ample testimony the court has heard. But these witnesses both saw the moment the attack took place. That's right, we saw it with our own eyes. It was 5 o'clock in the evening and already dark. There was typical London fog on the ground. When you saw the incident unfold and ran to the victim's aid, that was actually on the west side of Briar Road. That's not true. It can't have been. Constable Beat had arranged for you to be absent for a while by sending you for help, and during the 15 minutes you were away, he transplanted the crime scene. He moved all the things shown in the print, the victim, herself, the 4 books. He moved everything to the pavement on the east side of Briar Road. Extraordinary. But the constable overlooked one thing. What? What did he overlook? The bouquet, I presume. Exactly. The prosecution told the court just a few minutes ago about the discovery of the rose bouquet. Lord Von Zeyck said it wasn't noticed until the morning, as it lay where the street lamps cast no light. Yes, it couldn't be seen in the dark, obviously. Which is why it was only the bouquet that was found in its original position on the pavement on the west side. And that is the defense's theory about what really happened that evening. How do you respond? Constable Rowley Beat.
Well, I'm very sorry. Well, didn't mean to nod off again, but I haven't slept properly in a month. Did I miss anything important?
Oh, Rowley. It isn't true, is it? What that lawyer said is all lies, isn't it? I know it is, because you're the most upstanding, righteous man I know.
I had a dream. A terrible dream. all the things I did that night. Everything come out. Everything exposed. Only it seems it wasn't a dream after all.
Good golly!
Order! What on earth is the meaning of all of this? Oh, Rowley, why would you do something like that? Moving a corpse is a criminal offense, isn't it?
Wishing the victim dead should be one too.
Constable, explain yourself. Why would you do this? As a respected member of Scotland Yard, your duty is to protect the people. I can't say, sir. What? I really am ever so sorry about all this, for damaging the Yard's reputation, for everything.
I have a possible explanation for why on that particular evening Constable Beat felt compelled to move the scene. I can think of one reason. What? How could you possibly know? You, a foreigner, presuming to understand the mind of a Scotland Yard policeman?
And yet, Lord Van Zykes, it is this foreigner who has uncovered the startling truth. I believe it would be beneficial for the court to hear this extraordinary lawyer's theory. Counsel for the defense, if you please.
Yes, my lord.
Now then, I think you had better show us some evidence.
At once, my lord. England to Japan, it makes no difference. Human emotions are the same. I think I have a fairly good idea of the feelings behind this man's action. So I'm going to have to present this for it.
Take that!
I realize that I'm a foreigner in this land, and I have only just arrived from Japan, which is why all this information about London's so-called bobbies is completely new to me. I've learnt that, though honorable, patrolling the beat is the most demanding work in the world, for example. Keeping the peace, looking after the citizens on his beat, all kinds of ways. There's no doubt that the young bobby is charged with a great deal to do each day, certainly. But for Constable Beat, the day in question was special.
Special? How?
On account of this bouquet, my lord.
Oh, yes. It was our very first wedding anniversary.
Constable Beat had worked so hard to be able to afford this simple gift for his wife, and was so looking forward to taking her out for a celebratory meal, when he and Mrs. Beat stumbled upon a crime along Briar Road. When he saw that shadowy figure through the fog collapse on the pavement ahead of them, what must have gone through the man's mind?
But sir, on that particular day I was looking forward to celebrating my wedding anniversary. Miss B puts up with a lot being married to a bobby.
This is the warrant card that Constable Beat offered to lend me earlier. Inside, among the rules for patrolling policemen, it says, when a crime is discovered on his beat, a policeman must assist with the initial investigations and help detectives.
Aha!
Constable Beat, is that or is that not the reason why you moved the whole scene of the crime that day?
Yes. Everything you said is all right.
So that's it. It was all to do with the boundary of your beat.
Oh.
Exactly. To summarize, the incident actually occurred on Constable Beat's beat.
Good gracious, Constable, do you realize the gravity of what you have done? It was the first time since I became a copper that I'd ever cursed God. Stay close to me, Pat. The criminal could still be lurking somewhere. As we ran over to the scene, I had every intention of doing my duty as a police officer. We've got to report this situation to the station as quickly as possible. But then it dawned on me. I realised where we were, where the victim was lying, and what that meant for me. When a crime is discovered on his beat, a policeman must assist with the initial investigations. Why here? Why did this have to happen here? And why tonight of all nights? Why? It's a copper's job to guard the scene of the crime, so I told Pat she'd have to go to the nearest police box and fetch whoever was on duty there. It was then, when I opened my mouth to speak,
It just came out. I couldn't believe the words that were coming out of my own mouth. This is the beat next to mine, Pat. So you'll have to go to the police box that covers it. Turn right along Merchant Street and then... I'm sorry. I'm so sorry.
Oh, Constable.
I just wanted that one night to take my Patricia out for dinner. Oh, Rolly. Just for that one night.
You knew that if the incident was on your beat, your evening of celebration would be ruined, and so you decided to move the entire crime scene outside your jurisdiction, just across the street to the east pavement of Briar Road, which falls under the neighboring beat's care.
You see, I thought... Well, I was sure the victim was dead, you see. I beg your pardon? Oh, of course he did. Otherwise, my Rolly would never have left the poor woman freezing on the cold pavement. I see your meaning now. But God gave me back for my sins, didn't he? That's why I missed the rose I bought for Pat. Oh no, Rolly, this was all my fault. I should never have dropped it in such a dark place. I'm so sorry, Rolly.
And can you tell us, Constable, how many books did you move from one side of the road to the other?
Oh, 4. It was, yes sir, definitely 4.
Being the one that fell from the window upstairs in Gary's household. But what made you place that book in the victim's hand, when all the others were scattered haphazardly?
Oh, well sir, that's because that's how I found it.
How you found it? What do you mean?
When we first ran to the scene, the victim was already holding the book. So when I moved everything, I made sure it was still in her hand.
You're sure it was this book, The Lion's Pride, that the victim was holding?
Oh yes, sir. No doubt about it, sir.
Interesting. I already know what happened, because everything had to fall directly down on top of her. She has to have bent down to pick up the book, and that's when the knife hit her in the back while she was bent over.
I thought it was an open and shut case at the time, you see. There were only 2 people at the scene, and Pat and me both saw it happen. Whichever way you look at it, it had to be the fellow who ran off who done it, I thought. I couldn't see the arm, really. I didn't think moving it all over the road would make a jot of difference. I suppose this is for me now. I've had it.
My lord.
Yes, Lord Van Zykes?
I believe that concludes the cross-examination of the witnesses. Constable, you may withdraw.
Yes, sir. Mr. Prosecutor, sir. What will become of my Rolly? What will happen to him?
For now, you are free to go home. The police will contact you in due course.
Please, don't punish my husband. This was all my fault. It's because I'm always moaning at him for coming home late. Leave it now, Pat. Let's go home. I'm tired. All right then, my love.
One last thing, Constable.
Sir?
Let this be a lesson to you. In a criminal investigation, every detail matters, however insignificant it may seem to you.
Yes, sir.
Carve that lesson into your mind. And never again make the mistake of tampering with the scene of a crime.
Ah, never again, sir. You mean to say...
Leave now. This trial is not yet over.
Sir!
Hold on, I am sipping again.
Quite a startling revelation, I must say. Whoever thought of a third party transplanting the entire scene of a crime like that?
Indeed, my lord. Nevertheless, there are some immutable facts here. Principally, that the accused, Mr. Soseki Natsume, is the only person who could have committed this crime. No, I disagree. Now that we know the true scene of the incident, there is someone else. Another person who could be responsible. Forgive me for being presumptuous, but I believe the prosecution is probably well aware of this possibility.
Lord Van Zykes, is this true?
Very well. Name the person if you will, and if further investigation is warranted. The prosecution has no objection to the trial continuing.
You will name the other person who could have perpetrated the crime.
Well, it's, the lady, but not, not knowingly, but...
Take that!
The defense would once again like to request the cross-examination of a new witness.
Once again?
My assistant made the same request earlier. In order to fully reveal the truth about this case, it is imperative we cross-examine juror number 4, Mrs. Joan Gary.
But me? Oh, dear.
Objection!
That request has already been denied. But the situation is very different now. Miss Gary, please answer me this.
What do you want now, you little toad?
At the time of the incident, you were engaged in a violent argument with your husband, Mr. John Gary. In the course of the argument, a minor house fire was ignited, and to clear the smoke from the room, your husband opened a window that overlooks Briar Road,
Well, what of it?
You threw this book at your husband, which was covered with he was quartered with his back against the wall. Upon striking the pane of the open-hinged casement window, the book plummeted directly down, finding its way to what we now know to be the true scene of the crime.
Yes, and as I said, what of it?
During the argument, you were beside yourself with rage. As such, you threw not just books, but anything you could lay your hands on. So, let me ask you one more time. This knife, the one removed from the victim's back, have you really never laid eyes on it before?
I don't recall it.
Seriously?
Am I supposed to remember everything I picked up and threw? And anyway, the man over there in all the regalia said members of the jury needn't testify, didn't he?
Conveniently,
Objection.
yes. No, I have no recollection of saying that at all, juror number 4.
Oh.
Make no mistake, you jurors are not special in any way. You are not immune to the judicial process. If you know something about this knife, madam, let the truth come out.
But that's a common or garden knife. It could have been from anywhere. We have several like that at home. If one went missing, how would you expect me to know? What's that?
Are you joking?
What are you saying, please, Mrs. Gary? Now you listen to me. I refuse to listen to all this nonsense. I couldn't bear the thought that I'd injured someone. Do you hear? I couldn't bear it.
Oh, the poor woman.
So, yes, I want evidence. I want to see hard evidence if you're going to insist. You're going to have to prove that I threw that knife if that's what you think. Come along now, chop chop, what do your worst?
Well, Mr. Naruhodo, I would have already thrown it at her, the chip on the knife. Then take the stand, juror.
Oh.
The prosecution does not object to the defense's request to cross-examine this witness. Thank you, Lord Van Zykes.
I'm going to have to testify? Juror number 4, as I'm sure you will appreciate having observed it with your own eyes. Witness testimony can lead to the most extraordinary truths being revealed, truths of which the witnesses themselves may not even have been aware. Oh, dearie me. So I demand your full and unadulterated testimony. And mark my words, in this court of law today, we shall extract the truth. Do you concur, counsels?
Certainly, my lord. Oh, that's what I'm hoping for, my lord. This is such a strange feeling. For the first time since arriving in this country, it actually feels real. I'm here in the Old Bailey, and I'm a lawyer.
Alright, here we go, the final boss.
Witness, state your name and occupation.
Oh, yes, my name is Joan Gary, and I'm a juror and such like.
It sounds like she doesn't even know if she's a housewife or a maid or what anymore.
The court has decided your testimony is required. Do you understand, madam? Yes, my lord.
You will tell the court everything that took place in your household on that evening in question. And I warn you, do not attempt to hide the truth.
Oh, dearie me. Chin up, Joni. Nothing to worry about now. Oh, I didn't know you were here, John.
He put his medal on for this one, huh?
Wasn't only you in the room that day, old thing, was it? Rather think I ought to testify as well, don't you? But what about your knee, dear? Don't worry about that. Hardly notice it. I'm not the sort of chap to leave a comrade to face disciplinary action alone. Oh, John. I presume you are Mr. John Gary? Sir? Yes, sir. Former 2nd Lieutenant of the 3rd Regiment of the 4th Northumberland Fusiliers, sir. Seen my fair share of action and now living the quiet life, as it were.
The quiet life. Were you not engaged in an incendiary battle with your spouse on the day in question?
Ah, well, yes, quite.
I believe this may represent a first. Calling a jury to the witness stand is unprecedented. However, the court will hear your testimony now, juror number 4, and that of your husband. You will recount clearly and concisely the event that happened in the incident in your home.
Sir, at once.
Yes, on the day you're referring to, my wife. I feel like I've done a different voice for this guy every time I've seen him. On the day you're referring to, the wife and I did have a bit of a skirmish. Can't recall the reason now. Knocked a candlestick over and set fire to the carpet. Soon had it out, though, and got the window open. Meanwhile, I was picking up whatever I could find to throw at him. Plenty of knives around our place. Can't say I'd notice if one or two went missing, I'm afraid. If that bally thing in the victim's back really was one of ours, you'll have a job proving it, I think. It sounds as though it was quite the battlefield. Although an entirely one-sided assault, it seems.
The enemy caught us on the hop, sir. Had no choice but to dig in and take defensive measures.
To be honest, if the enemy had kept shelling us for another minute, we'd have been toast.
Of course, a veteran such as myself is the only too aware that on every battlefield you're just a gnat's whisker from death at any moment.
Are we still talking about a marital quarrel?
Well, I must say I'm dubious that the testimony will shed any light on the origins.
In combat, one's focus narrows such that the surroundings are barely noticed. These witnesses may not be able to offer anything more than they have already testified. This may be a dead end. And Zykes may be right. Well, whatever the chance is, we only have this last cross-examination to examine the truth.
Very well, counsel. Begin your cross-examination.
Alright, bit of a skirmish.
The reason is what you told us yesterday, I believe. Yes, that's right. If I remember correctly, it all started because of a note that was tucked into the pages of a book belonging to Mr. Gary. A rather passionate note, in fact. But Mrs. Gary found the note, discovering her husband's little secret, and she gave him a mighty number of slaps across the face.
What a sordid state of affairs.
Hell on earth.
I say, when a chap says he can't recall such things, it's common decency not to drag it all up.
And besides, half of it was wide of the mark anyway.
A likely story.
These waters run very deep.
And what transpired next?
Knocked the candlestick over. And the fire spread to some items of furniture, didn't it? The bookcase, my armchair, anything of mine, really. Just so happens there was some bath water around that evening, so I sloshed that about to put it out. A most precarious situation. Ours is a three-story townhouse on the west side of the street where the water main isn't connected yet. Have to draw water from the public pump during the day if you need any, you see. The lodgers are already moaning that they can't get any water at night, although that little mustached Japanese man buys water in bottles, I believe. The defendant, Mr. Natsume, you mean? Yes, he receives a stipend for his studies, you know, from his home country. Can you imagine being able to brew a pot of tea at all hours? He's obviously very well off. Have you actually seen the state of the man? I believe he uses all of his income to buy books. Well, anyway, the point is I was able to douse the fire with water, fortunately enough. Meanwhile, I was picking up whatever I could, even though the room was on fire. As far as I was concerned at the time, it was more important to extinguish my anger than the flames. When a woman wants to throw, she must throw. That is most certainly not true of a Susato takedown. How did she know I was thinking that? So please cast your mind back and try to remember. Was a knife among the things you threw? In all honesty, I can't recall, but I feel I must point out that I'm no monster. Let me see. Some bread.
By Jupiter! Excuse me!
Do you have something to add, sir? Mr. Gary. Don't shoot. Sorry, I beg your pardon. Did your wife's remark just now bring something to mind? Nothing of any significance, no. Just that the barrage of projectiles the old thing launched in my direction was something more solid than she implies. Books, bricks, and the fire poker, I seem to recall. Ouch. And the woman's aim is uncanny. She landed a direct hit with every volley. Ah! Good grief, woman, we are not at home now. This is a court of law. Oh, dearie me. What is she even doing with the teapot in here? Honestly, John, I would never have thrown such things at you, obviously. Well, take a look at this, then. How do you suppose that happened, Your pipe, sir? Had this thing in my hand as usual at the time of the onslaught. Knocked it clean out of my hand with one of her soft projectiles, she did, yes. And when I went to pick the thing up, it was broken in two. I'd like to see a sponge do that sort of damage. I see, your pipe was broken. It would never have been sent flying unless it was hit by something pretty solid. Anyway, I've managed to bandage the thing up for now. You are one to exaggerate, aren't you, dear? I wonder what we should make of this account. I mean, it could be important. The defense believes Mr. Gary's remarks now may be of great importance. This war veteran's words only tell us one thing. Betray a fiery wife and pipes as well as hearts may be broken. Sentimental wisdom, perhaps, but hardly worthy of adding to the formal testimony. Indeed, common sense, one might say. Might one? In that case, would you at least permit us to examine the pipe, sir? Well, I don't see why not. Oh, dearie me, there you go again, trying to ingratiate yourself with a young lady. Very well, the court will accept the gentleman's pipe. Let's crack that baby open. What we got? There's a chip. Oh, shit, it's the tip of the knife. We did it. Oh, something just twinkled inside the chamber of the pipe. Yes, I saw it. Something stuck in here, I think. Let's turn it over and give it a shake. What's this? It's a tiny fragment of metal. It's like the tip of a blade. The tip of a blade? Surely it couldn't be. We've fucking done it, lads. I was feeling rather disappointed for you that your request was turned down. Oh no, it's fine. Thanks to that, we have something to work with. Thank you for that rebuttal. Now, what can you tell us about the knife? Oh no, if two are missing, I'm afraid. Bolly of the time. You'll have a job proving it, I think. I found it. The proof.
Objection!
Mr. Gary, could I ask you to take a look at this, please?
You can ask, but I can't see a bolly thing. You can't? Used to call me Dead-Eyed Deb back in the day. Of course, that was some time ago now, even when I'm trying to enjoy a large print book by the fire these days. I struggle to tell a B from a D and a P from a Q, to be honest. Here he does, dearie me. It's rather wearing being asked about every other letter and every other word. You must be very dussy. What is that? A tiny scrap of metal? Yes, almost certainly from the tip of a blade. And what may appear at first to just be a tiny scrap is in fact just a crucial piece of evidence. Interesting. And where did the defense come by this evidence? It was lodged in the chamber of Mr. Gary's pipe. My pipe, you say? By Jove, I wonder how that got there. And what precisely does this fragment of metal signify, Counsel? Are you suggesting that it is in some way related to the matter of the stabbing? Yes. I am. What? When put together with another piece of evidence already in the court record, I believe this tiny fragment of metal will unravel the whole truth of the case. Oh, she's on a box. You appear rather confident. Very well then, present the pertinent evidence. Behold.
Take that!
This is the knife that was found in the victim's back. If you look very closely, you will see that there is a small piece at the tip that is missing. A common issue with the inferior blades sold at unsavory street markets. Criminals use them regularly, leave the tips lodged in their victim's bones. And what of this particular knife? No doubt its tip has suffered a similar fate, now lodged somewhere near the spine of the victim. No, that's not the case. The tip of this particular knife's blade is the very fragment of metal we discovered in the chamber of Mr. Gary's pipe. Ah! Ah! Good grief!
I don't believe it. The knife from the crime scene and this fragment of metal are a perfect match.
Good golly gosh! Order, order! Is this some sort of Eastern sorcery? He's not happy.
This is no magic, my lord. This is a miracle.
A miracle? So Von Zykes has figured it out, has he? Counsel, explain! Yes, my lord. The crucial point we have to ask ourselves is when did the fragment of metal find its way inside Mr. Gary's pipe? Something that was clarified for us in the most recent witness testimony. Had this thing in my hand as usual at the time of the onslaught. Knocked it clean out of my hand with one of her soft projectiles, she did, yes. It would have never been sent flying unless it was something pretty solid.
Oh, dearie me.
During the argument between the two that occurred just as the victim was on the pavement below, Mrs. Gary flung this knife at her husband. However, the knife missed Mr. Gary, instead striking the pipe in his hand, which caused the tip to break off, of course. Good lord! Yes, and that is when the tiny tip of the blade found its way inside Mr. Gary's pipe. The chances of that are 1,000,000 to 1! And yet, there's no other credible explanation for how the tip of the blade ended up in your pipe. Then, after losing its tip, the knife ricocheted off the pipe and flew out of the open window. Ah! In short, this knife, which fell from the window of Gary's house, is the very same knife that struck the victim in the middle of the back on the street below. Oh gosh, oh dear. No!
Objection!
Yes, how did it get in her back? Which I've known the answer to this question for the last, 2 hours.
A full-bodied theory, I'll give you that.
A complex bouquet of seemingly trivial points plausibly arranged to create an almost plausible, passable vintage.
Allow me to toast to my learned friend's characteristically Nipponese approach to bottling his argument. Sorry. But after all, it is just a theory. The bottle, I fear, is corked. Because you see... Dude, it's spoilt by an insurmountable inconsistency. An insurmountable? Lord Van Zykes, explain. What is this inconsistency? An inconsistency of the simplest nature, my lord. The victim was found with the knife planted in the middle of her back. Yes, in her... That's right, you silly little man. Now, Joan, old thing, what are you getting so excited about? Let us consider the basic facts of the case once more. The victim was walking along the pavement before being stabbed in the back and falling to the ground. If the knife that struck her had fallen from above, there's no possible way it could have planted itself into the victim's back. No, she was holding the book. That means she bent down to pick the book up, and that's when she got stabbed. Order! Quite right, you see, that's exactly right. If the knife had fallen from above, it would have struck her on the top of her head. Well, no, this is a very simple point. No. I hate you all so much. I hate you. It would appear the defense has made a rather spectacular blunder. If a theory has even one inconsistency, it cannot stand. Your theory, my learned friend, is history. We were so close, I could see the truth. I was so sure we were on the right track. But now my path has been blocked by just one inconsistency. Or in other words, we simply need to eliminate that one inconsistency. Mr. Sata, you mustn't worry. You were just caught off guard, and your mind went blank. But if the path you were on is indeed correct, then a way will present itself. The key is in the court record, I'm sure. It seems you have nothing to say, my Nipponese friend. Well, your silence speaks volumes. A tacit acceptance that your theory is fatally flawed.
Objection!
This inconsistency doesn't mean... Oh. It means I need to sharpen my mind and dig deeper. It's a test. Yes. If the knife fell on the victim from above, there's no way it could have hit her in the middle of the back. Under normal circumstances. What are you implying? Counsel? There is a piece of evidence in the court record that can explain this inconsistency. That can explain how the knife that fell from above have pierced the victim's back. We already have the answer. Goodness. Utter madness. Surely this must be the last time. Counsel, present the evidence. Now, do I present the book, or do I present the photo of her holding the book? I'm going to go with the picture of her holding the book.
Take that!
This, the fourth book found at the scene, is the final piece of evidence the defense will present. The burnt book. Is that not Mr. Gary's book? Yes. And to understand significance, we have to understand how it came to be at the scene. This photographic print clearly shows the book in question, and the victim holding it. But as we all know, it was the policeman that put the book between her fingers like that. Quite so, because that's how he found it. However, as part of his testimony, Constable Bate made an extremely enlightening statement on that point. Why did you put it in her hand? Because I found it like that. Yes. In other words, the victim had already picked the book up of her own volition. And clearly that must have been before she suffered the knife wound. Well, I should say so. After being struck with a knife, I don't imagine she'd be doing much of anything. So the question becomes, why did the victim have that book? By jingo. I think I'm beginning to see what may have happened now. Oh, dearie me. We know that the book fell from the top floor of the Gary household onto the pavement below, at precisely the moment the victim was walking past. Yes, exactly at that moment. The young woman was walking along the street in the light fog, when all of a sudden, a book fell right in front of her. The book I threw? Yes, Mrs. Gary. And what do you think the woman did? What would you do if you were walking along and suddenly a book landed in front of you? Well, I really can't imagine it, but I suppose she might have reached down and picked the book up. Yes, that is exactly what the woman in fact did. She picked the book up. Oh heavens. And when the woman reached down to pick the fallen book up, what position would her back have been in? That's right, facing the sky, completely and utterly defenseless. Then, in the very next moment, while the woman was still bent over picking up the book, the next object fell from the room above, the jackknife, straight into the middle of her back. And at that same time, walking by chance directly behind Miss Green, was the defendant, Mr. Soseki Natsume. Well, I'd never. It appeared to Mr. Natsume that the woman simply collapsed. In the dark and the fog, he didn't see the knife falling. Ah! And from the other direction, the constable and his wife saw no one but the victim and her apparent attacker. So there never was a real culprit from the scene in the first place. No, there was nothing more than a series of unlikely events that culminated in an unfortunate accident. And that is the real truth behind this case. Dude, these have been some weird fucking cases. Even for Ace Attorney. The very first time you showed me that knife, I had my suspicions. I wondered if perhaps it might have been something like that. There, old bean. Poor Mrs. Gary. Of course, I never meant for anything of the sort to happen, but it was all my fault, wasn't it? I take full responsibility. I let my anger get the better of me. I threw that book, and I threw that knife as well. Dear John, dear. It's all right. I know. I'm ever so sorry. Truly. I'm sorry. Oh dear. Alright. We did it, team. We saved the city. Lord Van Sykes, what news of Mrs. Gary? She's been taken to the infirmary. It would appear that today's events had left her in an especially flustered state. However, I believe she will recover in due course. There is no cause for concern. Yes, unbeknownst to themselves, they caused what could easily have been a terrible tragedy. They shall have to prepare themselves for the consequences of their actions. There is some good news, however, my lord. I have just had word from the hospital where the victim is being treated. Her condition is improving steadily, and the doctor believes she will regain consciousness soon. It's strange. We've been talking about the victim all this time, but we've never once met her. How wonderful. The woman is out of danger, it seems. That is good news. So, Mr. Setsuki Natsume. Yes. On behalf of my fellow countrymen, I would like to take this opportunity to beg your pardon, sir. You come from your distant eastern homeland to study our great British culture, and have been repaid with immeasurable unkindness. Please accept our heartfelt apologies. No, it's me who should be begging your pardon. Oh no, Mr. Natsume.
That evening, when the young woman just collapsed on the pavement before my eyes, I jumped to the wrong conclusion again in my confusion. What conclusion, sir? I was sure that the woman was dead.
Yes, Constable Beat said the same thing, didn't he? He thought she had been killed too. I suppose she must have looked completely lifeless.
It's been a year since I arrived in Great Britain now, but I still can't get used to life here. I can't relax. I'm sure there are evil spirits lurking in the fog, like they're haunting me.
Poor Saseki-san. His imagination really has got the better of him. Yes, poor man.
So even when it happened, I thought the young woman had been taken by the fog spirits. I should never have dropped my books like that and ran away. I should have called for help, for a doctor, for the police. Instead, I've managed to create a rift in the relationship of trust between our two empires, and for that, I am truly sorry. One could indeed say the same sort of mischievous spirit has been at work here, I think. One that created a chain of unfortunate mishaps. We were befooled by this spirit and led to false conclusions, but thanks to Lord Van Zykes and our young lawyer from the east, that chain has now been broken and the spirit exorcised. I heartily commend you both. Oh. Now then, ladies and gentlemen of the jury.
Yes, my lord.
In concluding this trial, I must ask one last time for your decision regarding the defendant's culpability. Are you ready to present?
As the foreman of the jury, I can assure you we've reached a fair and just conclusion.
I do declare the truth can be extremely cruel at times. Well, I didn't suspect the woman next to me, that's for sure. Sitting in for the old beam while she's out of action, you know, but I know what her decision would be.
Does this mean I'll finally be able to get out of here and start work? Well, it's about time.
I say I have a corker of a story to tell the grandchildren when I get home, won't I? Very well, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, I hereby demand your final decisions. Mr. Foreman.
Not guilty.
Not guilty.
Not guilty.
Not guilty.
Not guilty.
Very well, Mr. Saseki Natsume. I hereby pronounce you not guilty.
We did it. We saved the city, boys. Another day's work.
Man. There's been very few actual murders have occurred so far. And finally, Mr. Natsume. Oh, yes, Lord, sir. You are now a free man once more. It is my hopes that you will continue to further your education in British culture, and may you never again be brought before me.
Hopefully you also don't die.
Oh, yes, sir, of course. On my life, I swear I'll never set foot in a courtroom again. I'm transported to tears. Thank you, counsels. Court is adjourned. Oh, locum!
Wait, you mean me?
Of course! Is there another locum?
Is there even one? Compared to the original locum student, Mr. Naruhodo Esquire, your name has become rather short. What's wrong with using my actual name?
Oh, at last. I'm free. I'm free. Joyful, joyous, jubilant jubilation. Heedy, hearty, happiness, hurrah.
Oh, I am pleased. Mr. Natsume is delighted. Would it be so hard to just say that, then?
Locum, you did it. You saved me from the brink.
Well, what happened to the poor woman was in no way your fault, after all. I'm just glad everyone can see that now.
No, not that. Lovely, loyal locum lawyer.
Yes. I mean, as I said before, I have just never got used to life here in Great Britain. Every time I look over my shoulder, I see foreigners. I see towering brick buildings. And from high up windows, I see them looking down on me, laughing. Look at that little hunchback. Oh dear, I'm sure it's all in your head. But today, you locum lawyer gave my gloom the boot. You stood firm behind that baronial bench before all those babbling British. You battled to the bitter end, laying bare the baffling truth. And when I beheld the blinding fireworks among the beams of the Bailey's roof, I bellowed, "Behold the best barrister ever born!" Well, that's very flattering, and we're very pleased for you. This has given me a wonderful anecdote to recount to my old friends back in Japan. An anecdote? Is that what's become? There you are, my dear fellows. I apologize for keeping you waiting. I rose late this morning. Oh, Sholmes, what a pleasure. I see I am here not a moment too soon. A disaster has been averted, I'm glad to say. Oh. The trial shall begin presently, Mr. Naruhodo, and I wish you the very best of luck. It's just finished, actually. What? No. Then my haste was in vain. Ah, it's you, Herlock Sholmes. Oh, have we met, sir? This is Mr. Natsume, the man you arrested. Ah, I see. I failed to recognize you. Our previous encounters had taken place in the gloom, either of your bleak lodgings or of that prison cell. I simply couldn't place that curious face in the light. Charming. This is all your fault, Herlock Sholmes. You're the reason I had to go through this terrible ordeal. I'm going to give you a piece of my mind. My apologies, sir, but I assure you I have placed you now. You're the fellow who abandoned that poor young lady and ran off, are you not? Had she been taken to the hospital more urgently, I feel perhaps she would have regained consciousness by now. Oh. But it was unavoidable, I'm sure. We are but human after all. Anyone would have been shaken by such an experience. I do feel very badly about how I behaved. Well, never mind. Now then, what was it that you wanted to show me, sir? Say to me, sir. Nothing. Priceless. Oh, I'm sorry, really, but that was quite priceless. Poor Soseki-san. Still, on the bright side, you've had an extremely entertaining experience without paying a penny. And it would seem you were even not even found guilty. But there is no bright side. Whatever do you mean? Even after this, I'm still cursed by the spirits and now by the Reaper. Ah, Lord Van Zykes. I haven't forgotten, you know, what facing that man in court means. Even if you're found not guilty, you're still doomed. It will be all right. If the Reaper appears trying to make trouble, I will protect you. Hiya! I am not the Reaper. With a perfectly executed Sasato takedown. Much as I like being turned on my head, a bit of warning might be nice next time. So, Mr. Natsume, what do you intend to do now? You mentioned something about recounting your experiences back in Japan. Yes, I intend to return to my homeland soon. Oh. It has already been a year since I arrived in Great Britain. I've visited universities, libraries, bookshops. I've been honored with the tutelage of professors. I've learned so much about the wealth of literature here in the city it has shaped. And I've come to realize that it is my calling to sail home and tell my fellow countrymen about it. That's very touching, Mr. Natsume. Or in perhaps less veiled terms, you wish to withdraw halfway around the world to escape the terror of the Reaper's curse. That's not it at all! The more I learn of literature, the more this strange feeling claws at my insides. I feel compelled to return to my roots and attempt to pen a work of my own. Oh, I see. A work of literature by Soseki-san. Could be interesting. And what about Mr. Sato and yourself, Mr. Naruhodo? Sorry, what about us? Will you return to Japan alongside him? Why would we? A week has not yet passed since we arrived. And only now does it feel as though we've finally found our feet. And you are accommodated in a hotel at present, are you not? That's right, but we need to find lodgings before it bankrupts us. I've calculated we can only afford another 10 nights before our entire budget is exhausted. Well then, you should take my lodgings. Oh, the windowless room. But what it lacks in windows, it more than makes up for with a floor, a ceiling, and walls. Great. And of course, I'd be happy to leave the accursed evil spirit. An evil spirit? Oh yes, it tries to suffocate you while you sleep. It's an infallible wake-up call. Well, we'll think about it if that's all right. Perhaps I can offer a more welcome alternative. Would you consider taking lodgings with me? Freely? Well, a vacancy has conveniently presented itself, though it isn't up in the attic, I might add. Are you sure it isn't just a storage loft? I spoke with the landlady this very morning on the matter of price, and Iris is cleaning the room as we speak. You must come at once. I presume you have no luggage to speak of? Oh, this is simply wonderful. What an honor to be invited to taking lodgings with the great detective's office's attic. I'm too overcome for words. She's so suggesting we look elsewhere is out then. Then it's settled. Iris will prepare a welcome dinner this evening. And you must come too, Mr. Natsume. I insist. I don't know what to say, but thank you, and yes. Wonderful. Then I'll go and complete the paperwork. It shan't take long. Somebody's happy. Locum, I knew that you wouldn't let me down. I'm truly delighted to have met you here in London. Likewise, Mr. Natsume. It's been a privilege meeting you too. It's a shame that we're going to have to say goodbye so soon. Well, I've come to realize I belong in Japan, but Locum will meet again one day. Yes, I'm sure, and hopefully by then I'll be a successful lawyer. Hopefully by then I'll be a successful author. Well, my dear fellow, our carriage appears to have arrived. Shall we go, Mr. Naruhodo? Yes, Mr. Sholmes. I've little doubt Mr. Natsume will be released in time for dinner this evening. And so, with Soseki-san's innocence successfully established, we rode with Mr. Sholmes to what was to become our new home, 221B Baker Street. It's pretty nice. So this is our new office. Yes, our office. I rather like the sound of that. Me too. It's simply wonderful, isn't it? I hope you can see this, Kazuma. It's only a small step, but I'd like to think we're getting a little closer to your dream now. My dear fellows, do you like the place? Oh, you look a lot better dressed like that. Holy shit. Ah, Mr. Sholmes, yes, thank you so much. It's a delightful room, Mr. Sholmes. I simply adore it. Good, I'm pleased to hear it. Iris and I are delighted to welcome you. I hope everyone's hungry. It's nearly time for dinner. We'll eat as soon as Mr. Natsume arrives. We have a lot to celebrate. Iris, you must let me help you. All right then, Susie. You can be in charge of the salad. Splendid. So, Mr. Naruhodo, how does it feel to have your own office in the capital? It's very exciting, actually. I can't help wondering what adventures await us. Those were precisely my sentiments when I first established my office at these premises. Until I discovered the dark truth about the city of London, that is. Sorry. London is a glorious place, full of wonder, opportunity, prosperity, and myth. But the brightest of lights cast the darkest of shadows. Shadows? What do you mean? Well, I believe you're well aware of the murkiness that lies behind London's facade already. So, once again, Mr. Naruhodo. Welcome to London. Of course, at the time, I had no idea the significance of those words Mr. Sholmes so casually spoke. But it wasn't long before my turn came, to lift the facade and see the true depth of the murk that lay behind it. How ominous. It's okay, we'll probably end up arresting the Chief Justice at some point. That's usually how these things go. Or as Van Zykes for being a mass murderer, who knows. But one of them's probably done some nasty crimes.